Hey there, thanks for tuning in. I'm Dave Ohms. We're going to be going through a video cast today on reverse engineering. And what we're going to be looking at is pretty much how to set yourself up if you never really produced, or if you are producing now and you kind of get stuck, and I like to call it stuck in the loop. We're going to look at a key couple of things that I like to do and that I also teach with my students on reverse engineering a song. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is we're going to be taking a song of choice, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking this song and we're going to be applying a few techniques so we have a skeleton of how we can reverse engineer the song. So today I'm going to be using one of my songs that I have here. I'm going to be using the one called Platonic. Okay. That might be a little loud. Okay, so let me just bring that down a little bit. Okay, so that's the one we're going to be looking at, is that one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be bringing it in and I'm going to line it up on the audio track right here, right on the beginning of bar 9. Now I'm only doing this to line it up on bar 9 because let me just push it over because that's not the whole song. I want to make sure I get the whole song. Okay, that looks like the whole song. So I'm just going to kind of zoom in again and I'm going to line this up to bar 9. Now your first step that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to line up your track into the arrangement or whatever DAW you're using. In this case, I'm using Ableton here, but you want to be able to understand a couple things here, which I'm going to be talking about in a second. First is we want to bring it in and get it laid out on the arrangement. You can start in the beginning. I like to just start on bar 9. It doesn't put me right up against the edge of the screen. Gives me a little bit of breathing room. So this is the first step. Bring in your song. Let's have a listen. We're going to go through it. Okay. So have a quick listen. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So one key thing, once we bring in a song that we want to reverse engineer, the most important aspect of this is we want to make sure that we lock down this song into our grid or into the time frame of whatever the tempo is of our arrangement. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly show you here in Ableton is I just clicked on the track. I'm in the edit view here, but I'm going to switch this to so right now I'm sitting at 122. I'm just going to set it to a flat tempo, which is going to be like 120. Let's just do 122. Okay, so that's what my main arrangement tempo is. Now, a lot of the DAWs out there, Ableton, Cubase, Pro Tools, Logic, whatever you're on, they do support warping. I'm pretty sure like 90% of the DAWs nowadays that you can warp most of your music. You can do all time warping and audio warping. So in this case, what I want to do is I want to warp my song to my actual arrangement grid. So one thing I'm going to do first is I'm going to play through to make sure that this is actually in time with my metronome. So I'm going to turn my metronome click on. I'm probably going to bring it down a little bit here just so the volume's not so loud. Okay. And yeah, so that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to play it back. Okay. Maybe I'll bring it back up. Okay, I'm just going to scroll through. Okay, so it's slightly off, all right? So let's take a look. So I'm going to zoom in, and the thing with most audio warping features in most of the DAWs is there's a whole series of warp markers. Now, Ableton tends to be really quick in analyzing and scanning, and this is one of the reasons I really like to use it, especially for my production, is it's really quick when it comes to keeping everything in sync. But first, I want to make sure that my first beat is going to be lined up in my arrangement grid, but I got too many warp markers here to start with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave one. I'm going to click on one. I'm going to press Control A, delete it. So it's going to kind of just lay it out. So kind of clean it up a little bit. I'm going to line this up. Actually, let me undo that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to line the beginning and I'm going to zoom in. Let me switch my grid to a 16th. Okay, I'm just going to shut off my grid so I can line it right on to the beginning of the bar. So I need to do this because I want to line this up so it starts right when it clicks. So, okay, so there we go. So I lined it up, but now I'm having a quick listen, and this is the first stage, is that I have to make sure that once I bring this song in that I'm going to reverse engineer, I need it to be locked into my arrangement grid. And the reason I need this is because this is going to help us later, and I'll show you in later videos once we've done reverse engineering on how to actually start writing your own tracks and using a bass song as a skeleton. Okay, so that's the basic fundamental on that. So let's take a look. I'm going to zoom in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my grid so it's going to snap back to a bar. But what I want to do is there's a warp feature here in Ableton, which is going to be warp from here. Okay, so there's only one marker. I'm going to line it to the beginning. There it is at the beginning of the grid. Let's zoom out. Let's have a listen. And as we can hear, the actual song is really tight to my grid. Now, the only thing I'm not liking here is just because the algorithm in Ableton right now is using beats. I'm going to switch this to complex. It's a more tight, complex, detailed algorithm to keep the track sounding almost in its original state. Let's have a listen. Okay, so the main goal here is once we have the track sounding pretty tight, I want to scan the whole track. I'm just going to jump through sections just to make sure that the song actually is tight to the grid. And I keep my click track on just to verify. So if I bring the volume down so we can hear my click track or my metronome, and it's really tight to the song. Beautiful. Okay, so this is exactly what I need. All right, now that I have this done, this is literally like the first stage of getting the song laid out and getting it tight to your grid, because this is one of the most important before we start reverse engineering the song. Because if you don't have this set in place, believe me, I've done this many times with a lot of students and even myself over the years. The most important aspect is if you can get this locked in, when you go to write your songs later and you're using a song as a reference or a skeleton, it does help and it'll make your writing process that much faster. Okay, so that's the first step. Get it locked in, bring it in, get it locked. Second step we're going to be looking at here is we need to break this song down. So the most logical format that I'm going to be breaking this down, I'm going to be using my loop brace. So here's my loop brace right here. But I'm going to change this to what's called an 8-bar time frame. So on the top here in Ableton is where my bar and beat counts are, and on the bottom here is where my seconds and my minutes or my time structure is, my time code. Here's my bar and beat counts, here's my seconds and minutes. So the basic idea is I need to start putting in markers so I can strip this song apart into a skeleton. Okay, so how am I going to do this? Well, over here on the top right, if I were to click set, okay, what it'll do is it'll actually create a marker. So if I zoom in, you can see what it's doing is it's taking my loop brace and it's creating a marker at the beginning of the loop brace. So there's pretty much the beginning loop and the end of your loop, and then it repeats. Okay, so what I'm going to do is and here's another key thing that I like to do is if I take my loop and I can jump my loop in Ableton here, just kind of use my up arrow on my key here in my keyboard and just kind of go through, and I'm just jumping through the whole track, and you can see things are just landing in place. So the structure is pretty much really tight to my grid. So let me see, maybe this might have, yeah, so I was missing a little bit on the end there. Okay, so let's go back down. So you can just see I'm just kind of jumping through the whole track here. So my main goal right now is, which is the second thing I have to do, or the second point, is to create a marker at the beginning of every 8th bar. So I already got my first marker in. I'm going to jump up, and as I go up, I'm just going to hit set. Okay, and that's all I'm going to be doing. I'm going to do this until I've got the whole track pretty much done. Okay. Okay, so that looks like there's all the markers. So there you go. So we now have a whole bunch of markers across this song, and believe me, this is going to be really important, because later when we start to create our mix notes and take pointers of what's going on in the song as we reverse engineer the song, is we need these markers as our guide to look back as a reference. We're going to be doing mix notes in the second video, and I'll show you how that is. But this is the basic structure we need to set up before we can start reverse engineering. So here's my markers. If you want, you can right click here in Ableton. I can just right click and rename it. Whatever DAW you're using, go ahead and rename it. We can type in, for example, intro. So there's intro. Okay. So I can name it intro. So there you have it. So these markers, like I said, they're going to be our guiding factor to us to determine what our mix notes are going to be. So I'm just going to leave this in a numerical system here as a reference, as a numerical reference, just because just keep it simple on my points. But you can name it. I do name some of mine, and as you start writing, let's say once we've done reverse engineering, we've done a song of choice, and you're ready to start writing your track, you'll then start probably changing these markers and slowly start eliminating some of them and just start naming them, such as intro, verse, chorus, and etc. Okay, so this is the first process, the first stage to reverse engineering a song, getting the song into the arrangement. Make sure it's locked into your grid, whatever feature or however you're going to do it with the DAW of choice. Here, I brought it in, I warped my markers, and this is actual audio warping, meaning I'm taking my song and I'm stretching it or compressing it to warp to the actual tempo of my DAW. Okay, there's the other way around, which is time warping, which is stretching your grid. Okay, you can also do that too, but here what I did was I audio warped the song. Okay, so there you have it. I laid out the markers. Now the song's ready for the next step, or a second part, which is going to be mix notes. Catch you in the next video, and thanks for watching.